Welcome to Happier ADHD. My name's Marley Darling. I'm a second generation neurodiversity expert with over 17 years experience, and now I'm raising my own neurodiverse kids. You'll notice that I call the podcast a few different things, but we always explore these same topics that I've been looking at for the last 17 years. Psychology, mindset, neurodiversity, personal development, health and well-being, business, parenting, and more. So, without further ado, let's jump in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This episode's going to be a little bit interesting because I wrote the notes for it a couple of weeks ago and didn't record the episode. And I've already recorded the next episode. So I'm going to have to look back and try and get in the headspace for where I was at the time. And I think I can do it. So bear with me and let's jump in. Little big thing. The little big thing of the time was niggling jobs. You know when a little thing goes wrong or breaks and you're going to have to fix it and you think you should get around to it soon, or maybe you think you don't want to get around to it soon, and eventually it gets to a point where it's just a part of how you live. This can happen with really tiny things or really big things, like maybe you have a wobbly chair at the dinner table, or maybe a door handle broke, or perhaps you had some things you needed to take to the tip and you sat them down and then they became a doom pile that slowly became invisible and you no longer noticed it or registered it as a task that needed to get addressed. There was once in my life that I was a lot younger and I had a fridge that was missing a shelf. It was a cheap fridge, it was delivered and I couldn't pick it up, and I thought I could get some kind of shelf and make it work. But you know what? I didn't. And for months, we were just stacking things up in the fridge and making do without that extra shelf. And it just became a part of life. And people would come over and remark on it, and then I would see it through their lens that actually, yeah, that's not normal. And it is a bit of a workaround that we've just gotten used to go without that shelf. The same thing happens with the wobbly chair, or having doom piles in the corner, or handles broken on cupboard doors, or whatever it might be. But all of those little things will have a weight on you and your psyche. You don't notice it, but the effort that you're going to work around them, that does take energy, that does take executive functioning. So try this at home. Notice one of them, choose one of them and get it fixed. So for me, there were handles in our kitchen that had broken off and we were using string in the meantime as a workaround. I actually didn't fix this myself. I had a friend notice and fix it for me, and oh my gosh, the difference that it makes. But it's the kind of difference that you notice it at first and then you quickly become used to it again, because it's actually totally normal to have handles on your drawers. And for the first few times I was trying to open the bottom drawer first to get to the next drawer up, because that one actually had also lost the string that was acting as a handle. And I realized, hang on, there's a handle on there now. And either that sounds like a ridiculous example, or you think, Marley, that's so silly, you shouldn't be living without handles, you should just fix it. But this is what ADHD is like. We just get used to these little problems. So find one of those things that is a low-hanging fruit that can easily be fixed, and see about sorting it out so you don't have that tiny little stress, that tiny little pebble of weight on your brain. So that was a little thing, but it was a big thing. So related to that, the on my mind, at least at the time, was delegation. When other people have energy to do the things that you don't have the energy to deal with. And you might have more energy to deal with other people's stuff, because what happens is we get this emotional attachment and something can become really big. We can build an ADHD wall of resistance and we don't want to do it, or maybe there's something stopping us from doing it. Maybe it's a telephone call we don't want to make because we don't want to speak to the person, or we're just not up for that social interaction, or maybe like me with the drawers, I just didn't really know how to fix it. The handles were a bit weird, or whatever it might be. there's some kind of resistance when it's with your own stuff. And I often see this with my friends, and they're all neurodiverse, and they easily offer, they say, hey, maybe we could switch. I could do your thing and you do my thing, because it doesn't have that same resistance and weight. For some of them even that hate making phone calls for themselves will be happy to do it for other people's. It just doesn't have that same level of resistance. For me recently, one of those things was sewing the badges on a Scouts uniform. I do not like to do that, and my friend sat down and did it and just whipped it up. And that's just a mental weight for me. I've even heard neurotypical people talk about this. Like in your household, maybe you hate cooking, but you don't mind doing the dishes, and your partner likes the cooking, but the dishes feel like the uncomfortable thing. We each have our own resistance to different things, or reasons why we don't like things. Like my ex-partner didn't like to get his hands wet with the dishes, so he hated doing the dishes. Whereas for me, I don't like cooking because of all the steps that it takes and the decision making and the executive functioning involved. I like how mindless and easy the dishes are. So different people have the different things that they like to do. And when you delegate the things that mean a big deal to you, but don't take as much effort from other people, we can create this really beautiful system where everyone's getting this weight off their shoulders and also being generous and helping other people, and everyone feels a little bit lighter and things are a little bit easier, and they get done without all that level of resistance and the forcing yourself to do the things. The other thing is, sometimes you actually just need someone to be with you while you do the thing. So I'd been putting off fixing a few bits on my guinea pig hutches, but I had a friend over and they were kind of helping me out doing some things around my house just because they saw it needed doing. And I mentioned that the guinea pig hutches needed something fixed. And then I thought to myself, you know what, I might even have the parts to fix it. And I walked over and looked under the house because we were outside anyway, and I found some bits and pieces. And I did it. It was funny because when I looked at them and I asked my friend for advice, they said that I could use zip ties to fix it. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to get some zip ties. Maybe I'll go and look in my miscellaneous tool mess and see if I have any. And I actually found the actual clips that came with the hutches. There were some spares in there. So that was super handy. So sometimes maybe you just need someone near you. Maybe you just need to talk it through. Maybe you need a body double to encourage you to get it done. And the other thing is, maybe you just need to see someone else do it first to like crack the seal. So for ages, my kids have been asking to make nigiri at home, the sushi that's like a little rectangle of rice and then vegetable tempura on top, wrapped up with a strip of nori. And I don't know how to make vegetable tempura, and it seemed like too many steps, and I don't know how to make the rectangle. My kids were telling me we need to buy the big industrial machine just like the sushi shop has. So I just kept saying, well, no, we're not going to do that. It's too much, maybe one day. And then my friend, she felt like it was not so difficult. She didn't have that level of resistance, and I guess she's made veggie tempura before. So she came around and she made the veggie tempura, and my kids sat there and they figured out how to make the nigiri themselves without me having to think that through. And this was a real breakthrough, and I was so grateful, because what a beautiful thing to have other people that can take you step by step through things, or create these opportunities, especially for your children, that you just don't have the energy to undertake yourself. And now I've seen the veggie tempura be made, and it's not as hard as it was in my brain, or it seems like a smaller deal because I've seen it visually. I'm a visual learner. I need to be taken step by step through things. I've seen it now, and I can probably figure it out myself. I've been near it. Like, I could probably have gone out of my way to watch a video, but that seems like effort as well. So this has kind of cracked the seal. It still seems like a pretty involved meal, I guess. Although if my kids are putting it together, then maybe it's just a fun activity to do together. So that was a really beautiful thing. And it's funny because, again, some projects seem like a lot of weight and others don't seem so much. Like in our homeschooling groups, I am happy to bring activities because they excite me, particularly with craft or setting up a sport or an activity that seems like less weight than perhaps other things. So I'm always looking for the things that are like the low-hanging fruit, the lowest entry point. I don't have to collect materials that I don't have. I can be really creative with the resources that we do have and create these experiences for other people with the energy and resources that I have in my brain. Whereas other people, I've got a friend who is figuring out how we can do lino printing with the kids. And for me, that would just seem too hard. And it may sound silly talking about this, but or these things in this way, but this is what happens with our neurodiverse brains, is some things seem easy or interesting or exciting, and we can get interested and hyper-focused on something to the point where we go through a lot of effort and a lot of energy and invest a lot in new materials and learn a lot about a topic and have so much energy to keep going. And other times it just seems impossible to do something that might actually be less effort or same amount of effort and similar sort of resources and tasks. Like maybe it's a different kind of craft, but it seems more difficult. Like for me, lino printing, it's something that I've done as a kid and I could theoretically work it out, but I just don't have that pull to do it. But I'm really excited to do it, and I'm glad that someone else can make that happen. So that's what's been on my mind, is that how we can really work together to delegate the things we don't like and to offer and be generous with the things that are easy to us and come naturally to us. And that creates a really beautiful system where we're nourishing and helping and supporting one another. And it's kind of related to, I see a lot of ADHD cycles, and this is like another kind of cycle, but it's an interpersonal cycle. What goes around comes around, and we can all contribute. Okay, talking about cycles, in wins and workarounds, I've written about batching and cycling for when your brain is ready. So I was writing my blog posts, and it took me a little while to open up to actually doing it because there was a little bit of resistance there. I tried not to build it into an ADHD wall, but there was a little bit. I just wasn't ready yet to get started. And when I did get started, I drafted out this post, and it turns out when I came back to it a few days later that it wasn't just one post, it was actually multiple. I started reading and realized that I was going off on a tangent, so I broke it up into several different posts. And originally, when I had sat down, I thought, well, I'm not focused enough to actually write a post. I'll just see what happens, what comes out. And when I looked back at it, I thought, well, this is not very focused. It's not very much a blog post. But then when I started realizing that it was multiple posts, I actually got really excited because although I didn't have a big draft for a post that I could just work on and edit and structure and it would become its own post, I had several ideas already for different posts. And I thought motivation was just one post. I thought I was going to write about motivation and then have to think of something else to write about. But what I realized is that's a really broad topic. So a topic for a blog post is actually so much smaller than that. And as I started to break it down, I started to have more ideas. And I ended up with this great big list of blog posts that I could write. So instead of feeling stuck, like I had to force myself to write this post and like I had sat down and done this draft that didn't really lead to anything, what I realized was that I had been putting these roots down, and that leads to faster growth. So I hadn't created a blog post, but I'd put down these roots for about, I think it was about 10 or 12, just in that initial second session of realizing that's not just one post, let's sit and brainstorm. And that was a really productive brainstorming session. Then I went through and I started drafting a few of them. I didn't complete one, but I drafted them. And what happened was that led to me being faster at finishing multiple. When I sat down the next time after that, I finished 3 blog posts in one setting because I had worked on them all to a certain amount and then stopped and left it to come back to. Now, sometimes it's not good to leave projects half finished. Sometimes it's good to follow all the way through and get something completed. But when you batch things, you can keep your brain in the same mode that it's in. So when I was brainstorming, I could keep it in the mode of brainstorming. When I was drafting out each post, I could keep it in that creative mode of what's going to go into each post. And then on the day that I completed 3 posts, that was more the technical side of editing it, thinking about catchier headlines and subtitles, and being in that mode. So rather than berating ourselves for, oh, we didn't actually finish the thing, I just half did a bunch of things, if half doing those things will then lead to you doing the other half in one go of multiple things, then that is a benefit. It also helps build momentum and progress and gives bursts of dopamine, because you can see, actually, I am getting somewhere. Rather than slog through and make your brain switch modes, and it might not be feeling like switching from that creative brainstorming to that creative writing to that more technical side. I've spoken before, and I think it's in the next episode that I already recorded, maybe it was last episode, is that there's the different types of brain work and the different types of productivity, and all of them are valid, but you don't need to push yourself through. Then you start feeling tired, and it doesn't feel as satisfying to finish a post if you have forced yourself to do it. If we can learn to recognize and harness where we are at, then we can move faster, because we are using that energy rather than trying to squeeze ourselves and force our brain into the path that we're not ready yet at that time. And we can trust that we will come around and be ready for that path next time. Or we can use different strategies to make sure we do get finished and prioritize and do the things that need to get done. And I've written here, we don't want to do actual task switching. For example, I did think at one point, I could make a related TikTok to this blog, and maybe I should get my TikTok happening up again, and I could make all these posts and link it back to my blog. But I said to myself, no, that's for later. This isn't a part of the current process of blogging. That's something that can come afterwards. You want to make sure that you're not chasing multiple rabbits at once, because then you'll catch neither. So that's my little discussion on wins and workarounds, and how batching can be like putting those roots in to have that fast growth later. All right, in Life Lounge, we're talking about mental and emotional health and anxiety attacks. So this time I was having quite a bit of anxiety, and I didn't actually realize I'm so familiar with anxiety that it just seems normal. But one morning I was lying in bed and I didn't get up straight away, even though I had a visitor, and I just felt like hiding, and I needed time to work through my emotions. And I realized I hadn't felt like that in quite a long time. I was getting anxiety attacks over a decade ago that was similar, that I just didn't want to get out of bed. I felt like hiding, and I didn't want to talk about it. This feeling of kind of cocooning and shying away, but being stuck in my head and being almost, mute to a degree, like just feeling that really closed off, not wanting to talk feeling. And it was an interesting experience. I didn't let it build. I lay there and I breathed through it, and I said, these are just thoughts. And I'm not going to go into right now how to deal with anxiety attacks. But what I found was interesting was that a lot of mornings I will be lying in bed and I'll be stuck in my head, and my eyes will still be closed, and I'll just be thinking. And I'll find it hard to get out of bed. And I think that having not racing thoughts, they call it racing thoughts with ADHD. And I found that really inaccurate, because racing thoughts implies that they are really fast. And for me, they're just constant. It's constant trains of thought happening all the time. And so this lying in bed is just this constant thinking, and then it feels like a weight to get out of bed. And I think that thinking is what actually weighs the body down. It stresses the nervous system out, and taking action and actually getting out of bed and doing something practical can cut off that overthinking. And it feels kind of like I need to lie there and get the energy before I do that, or that I need to let these thoughts play out and find a point where I'm actually ready. But I think it's just a bad habit. I think I need to get back into the habit of realizing you're awake, get out of bed. Waking up is a bit of a transition, and we can use different strategies to make those transitions happen smoother. Lying in bed and thinking for what can be like 40 minutes and I don't even notice because of time blindness, it's just silly. I've got other things I want to do with that time and other things I want to do with my day. But my point is, I realize that there might be a level of anxiety attached to that I haven't been recognizing. So on this particular day, when it felt more like an actual anxiety attack, when I was stuck in my head, didn't feel like talking, I lay there and I put my hands on my chest and I breathed slowly, and I made a decision not to suppress the thoughts that come, and also not to spiral and buy into them, because a few thoughts came in like, oh, everything's hard. I should think about everything that's hard right now. And I said, no, I can think about them. I can acknowledge them, but I don't need to lie here and feel sorry for myself or build my anxiety. I can think about them and recognize they exist without going on tangents in my brain to really feel into those things. And what I said to myself is to choose, is this for now or later? Is this helpful for me to ponder? Does it need brainstorming? Does it need an action plan? There's a strategy for anxiety called having a designated worry time. And you write down anything you need to worry about, and you give yourself maybe 15 minutes a day where you can sit down and worry about those things. And the rest of the day, you just add them to your notes to think about later, and you don't worry for the rest of the day. And that's a really interesting concept. For me, I don't use that strategy, but I found those other thoughts quite helpful. If this thing needs me to think it through, I can set aside some time to think it through. But if I'm just going to stress about it, then it's like that saying that says, it's the serenity prayer. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but you might know it. It's about accepting what you can't change, having the courage to change what you can, and being able to know the difference between the two. And if you can't change something, there's no use stressing yourself out about it. You can have feelings, you can think about them, but also you can decide what's a helpful thought, what's a productive thought. Is it making you feel good or bad? Is it getting you anywhere? Does it need to be given space to be worked through, or can you let it go or leave it for later without suppressing, just letting it go? So I've written here, I made sure to open my eyes, to ground into the moment and breathe, rather than to disconnect and go internal. And that's what I was saying earlier. I find myself lying in bed for 40 minutes some mornings, just thinking. And I've realized lately, I think I said in an episode recently, that my brain likes to think, and I am a thinker and a writer, and I can channel that into productive things rather than just circles in my brain or having the same old thoughts. They say we have maybe 90,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are the same thoughts as yesterday. How absolutely boring. And that's why creativity and channeling our thoughts and being active and getting involved in life and getting out of bed in the morning is a really beautiful, beneficial thing, because who needs to be living like a robot doing the exact same thing every day? Not me. All right, after all of that heavier stuff, let's have Joy Break. Now, in Joy Break at the time, I've finished it now, but my guilty pleasure was watching The Ultimatum Queer Love. And that is a nice escape for me. I don't love reality TV, but I do find that one interesting because it's about relationships and communication, and I'm really interested in psychology and how people talk to one another and interact with each other. So I love to analyze it. a little bit, and I also just enjoy watching it because it's not just trashy drama. It has that element of relationships and psychology, which I'm interested in. And so I had some evenings just by myself watching it, or sometimes in the daytime to take a break. Occasionally it would be like a really short little joy break, just watching some on my phone, just as a little treat. It's okay to watch a little bit of TV. It's better than scrolling. I think in the next episode I talk about Facebook use again, but Facebook is such a waste of time. We think that watching TV in the middle of the day, that's something that used to be frowned upon, I suppose, because it's people that were stuck at home and watching things like Days of Our Lives. But here we are using our phones for things like Facebook and spending hours a day in tiny doses. So I'd much rather sit down and watch 15 minutes of a TV show that actually helps me escape and nourish and do something for myself, and it feels like a treat, whereas obviously using Facebook doesn't. Facebook gives you all sorts of things all over the place and is very dysregulating because you're processing huge amounts of information. So that was my little joy break for the time, and I've written here, once done, I will pivot to a new book and get back into podcasts, or maybe keep focusing on outputting poems and my blog. Now, I've slowed down on the poems. I've made a note because I want to write at least one a week and spend more time doing that. And like I said, if I'm thinking in my head, I should write a poem instead. That's a catchy little rhyme. If I'm thinking in my head, I should write a poem instead. But I have been focusing on outputting the blog. I have done an amazing job, I would think. I've written, at least 10 posts, I think. And yesterday I published my first set of 5. I wanted to have some batched, and now I'll cut down to just writing one a week, which will be nice after working so hard for quite a while. And I have picked up a new book, and I did put on a podcast yesterday as well. So I'm getting back into those things, as much as I would love to have a TV show to watch. Oh, I did start watching Overcompensating last night for a new TV show. Just, if you want to stay updated on what I watch. I've been trying a few things lately and haven't gotten into anything, so that's a bit sad, but I definitely like to have a book on the go, and it's been nice to have some cozy evenings just reading a book instead of watching telly. And I last night watched that episode and then still did some reading before bedtime as well, just as a little wind down. I'm really nourishing my evening routine at the moment. And was it last week or next week that I talk about yoga? Doing yoga in the evenings. I did that as well after TV as a ways to wind down, so that was really nice. So that was a little ramble about my joy break. And the last thing, letting go and letting in. Letting go of niggling stresses, the little tasks. What have I written? And shifts, like the niggling stress of the kids' bedtime and having those transitions. And I have been letting go of that stress a little bit, trying to get them in bed more on time, trying to make sure I'm reading instead of just standing around or looking at my phone. And also after dinner, making sure I'm connecting with my kids and having a board game or something like that. Sometimes a family TV show, and then transitioning more easily to bedtime. And I've said raise my standards. I'm not sure exactly what I was talking about. I think probably in general, just having less stress and looking after myself and actually addressing the stresses and finding a better way to do things, which is what I'm all about and why this podcast exists in the first place. And for letting in, I've written incremental upgrades. So bit by bit, fixing the little things that are broken, upgrading things that need upgrading. Maybe my slippers are getting a bit old and there's a hole in the toe. Now I've had them for a few years now. Maybe it's time. Or, fixing the door handles, or not putting up with scrolling Facebook if it's stressing you out, or if the kids are, doing something at bedtime and it needs shifting, then actually shift it. What was the other thing I was going to say with incremental upgrades? Oh yes, routine. routine upgrades as well, bringing a bit of yoga into my life, or maybe I'm eating a little bit healthier. I had some salad for lunch today. I love incremental upgrades and I love small shifts. I am all about small shifts that have a big impact. That's like the tagline for my courses and programs, and it's my belief in all of this stuff. This is how we upgrade our life, is through those small shifts. So thank you for listening to this podcast episode. I think I did okay with getting back into my head from a few weeks ago, and that's what I love about this podcast, is I can listen to an episode from a year ago and I'm like, I remember that. I remember when I was working on that thing, and either it needs more work, or maybe I completely forgot that I was even working on it. Maybe I took a pause from it, or maybe it's just second nature now. I love when I realize that I have made these incremental upgrades and that life is always getting better. The better it gets, the better it gets. All right. I'll chat to you in the next episode, and I hope you can find one stress to address and have one less stress in your life. Bye. So you've got neurodiverse kids in your life. You've probably noticed that they don't respond well to traditional parenting techniques or discipline or ways to get them motivated or to comply. Maybe you're tearing your hair out with stress and the same old struggles and fights and arguments every single day. Or perhaps you're feeling completely lost because you've tried absolutely everything and it just doesn't seem to work. These kids do not respond to behavior charts. They don't respond to power being asserted over them. What these kids need is something completely different. And what I'm going to suggest to you is you actually stop trying to change them. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And you cannot change these children. You cannot control their behavior. But if you change something around them, you change their environment, you change how you act, it will change how they react. It will change how they respond. If you change something, then no longer will you be stuck in this cycle of doing what you've always done and getting what you've always got. And those traditional methods do not work. So stop wasting your time and energy on them. I know you're looking for a solution and you feel like it's just not possible anymore, but let me tell you, I was in the exact same boat, and then I realized what we need is to do something radically different. My approach is to change the environment around them and to change how you interact with them, and that will have the biggest impact. It'll stop you feeling like your head is butting up against a wall, and it will start actually creating change with less effort. I believe in small, easy to implement shifts that create big change. So if you're interested in seeing what I have to offer, head over to marleydarling.com, and I've got a free webinar there for you to check out, and then comprehensive programs that cover everything I've learned in over a decade of parenting neurodiverse kids, and also in being a neurodiverse person myself who's been studying neurodiversity for over 17 years. I'm here to help you. I'm here to give a different approach, and I wholeheartedly believe that we need a radically different approach to support these children, to empower them to live the best lives possible, and to give you a bit of a break as the parent. So head on over to marleydarling.com, where you can find some free resources and maybe check out my comprehensive programs if you're ready to see a massive difference in your life through just some small shifts. See you there.